Civil AccuDraw settings. To get to your Civil AccuDraw settings is if you go to the second icon on your Civil AccuDraw toolbar, which is this right here, and go ahead and left click on it. And in here you got 4 different tabs. You got the Operation tab, you got the Display, the Coordinates, and the Favorites. If we go to the Operation tab, you have some different options depending on how you want Civil AccuDraw to operate. The first one is the auto load, which if that's checked on, it's automatically going to load Civil AccuDraw up whenever you open up a DGN file. So you can toggle that on or off if you wish. I'd probably leave it toggled off. Activate Civil AccuDraw whenever you want to use it by clicking on this icon right here. The second one is the floating origin, and by default that's checked on. So whenever I come out here and place something, and we'll use the place line tool as an example, I'll left click once and I'll come out here and just dynamically place another point, and you see that that compass floats to the next point. If you have that unchecked, it defaults down to 0, 0 as the origin. If you want to use that, you could, but I don't really feel that there's a need to do that. So for the most part, we want to leave that checked on, so whenever you input something in from a previous point, you can type those values in, whether you're using the delta X, delta Y option, or maybe some of these other Civil AccuDraw options down below here. The third one is your contact sensitivity, and what that will do is if that's unchecked, your compass will stay orientated with the view. So if I come out here and I just place an angled line, you'll see that the compass stays orientated with the view. If I have that checked on, left click to start the line, I'll come out here and place another point, you'll see that the compass now is orientated to the angle of that previously placed line. So if I come out here and place another one, you'll see that it's angled a little different now, and so forth. That'd work pretty good if you're traversing around a piece of property, but that's pretty much the only example where you'd probably use that context sensitivity. There may be some other options, but that's what the context sensitivity does. I'm going to go ahead and uncheck that, and I'm going to do an undo. If the compass is not orientated with the view, I can hit the letter T on the keyboard and bring it back to the top view. The smart key-ins, that will utilize the smart key-ins that Civil AccuDraw can use, and that actually uses the same smart key-ins as the Microstation does. It uses that same file for the Civil AccuDraw and the Microstation AccuDraw. So if you know some of the shortcut key-ins for Microstation AccuDraw, a majority of those will also work in your Civil AccuDraw, but not all of them. There are a few of them that will not work. And then you have some of these other ones down below here that says preserve method locks. So if you typed in something, it'll kind of memorize those locks that you had. Sticky Z lock, you can always show the compass, and then also show AccuDraw dialog, which will just put a dialog box on the screen here, and it won't be on the end of your cursor. So that's kind of personal preference if you want that or not. But by default, it's going to be unchecked. So those are some of the operation toggles that you have here, depending on how you want Civil AccuDraw to work. And by default, the floating origin, the smart key-ins, and the preserve method locks will be checked on. The display option, that is the display of your compass whenever it's out on the screen. So like the x-axis, it'll be this color right here. The y-axis, it's going to be this color right here. Your fill, how many points you want this to be defined. You can change all those values by unchecking this box and changing those to different values if you wish to do that. Same thing for your constraint dynamics, you can change those accordingly. If you do want to see some of your shortcut key-ins, you can click on this little icon right here, and it will show you all the key-ins that Civil AccuDraw can use. And like I said before, it's using the same key-ins as the Microstation AccuDraw. But there are a few of those that will not work. For instance, like the enter for the smart lock, Civil AccuDraw doesn't use the enter key with the smart lock like it does in the Microstation AccuDraw. So I'll go ahead and close that down. So that's the display option right there. So that's the display tab. Now if we go to the coordinates, here's where you can come in here and put in a unit round off if you want the round off to always go to a certain distance or a certain angle or a certain offset. And that are these toggles right here. Of course I can put in a value of whatever, but as long as these toggles here are unchecked, not going to lock those values in. But those are some of the unit roundoff options in your Civil AccuDraw option. In standard Microstation AccuDraw, you do have the option that says distance and angle, but in Civil, you also have the options to do station and offset, since it's more with Civil design. And then also some indexing options down below here, which we're not going to worry about. And then last, you have your favorites. These are your favorites of different operations of Civil AccuDraw that you can use. And by default, we'll have the delta X, delta Y, the XY, distance, direction, distance, distance, station, offset, delta, station, offset, direction, direction, and offset, offset. So those will be there by default. Those will probably handle 99% of the options that you'll probably use with MoDOT functions and with Civil design. If there is another method that needs to be added, you can add that by clicking on the add and creating your own, or if it's something that gets used quite often, we could add it to the MoDOT workspace. But for the most part, those are all the options that will be set up for your favorites using Civil AccuDraw. That's basically all the tabs and the settings for your Civil AccuDraw settings.